There were 12 of them, soaked, muddy, scared. My brother-in-law was banging on my door, begging for shelter. Just days ago, he mocked me for preparing. Now he was crying in my arms as the flood swallowed our street. I didn't say I told you so. I just whispered, Jehovah warned us. Before I begin, I just want to say thank you to all my subscribers for your love and support. Your encouragement keeps stories like this going. If you're new here, please subscribe now and tap the bell so you don't miss the next emotional and faith-strengthening testimony. Your click helps spread these stories to more people who need them. Obedience can look like madness until the rain starts falling. My name is Nathan. I'm 38 years old, a baptized Jehovah's Witness, living in a small riverside town in Missouri. It's the kind of place where people leave their doors unlocked, and everyone knows your business before lunchtime. I worked in construction for most of my life, so I'm not the type to panic or jump at every headline. But what I'm about to share with you is something I'll never forget, because it changed my life forever. It all started with a talk at our circuit assembly. The brother on stage said something that hit me like a brick to the chest. He read Proverbs 22:3. The shrewd one sees the danger and conceals himself, but the inexperienced keep right on going and suffer the consequences. Then he paused and said, sometimes Jehovah gives us clear warning through his word, and the question is, will we act before it's too late? That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the river behind our neighborhood. It had been rising bit by bit over the years. Nothing dramatic, but enough that some folks in town started joking about needing boats instead of cars. I'd heard the reports about heavier rainfall and dam backups upstream, but no one took it seriously. Still, that scripture wouldn't leave me alone. So I prayed. I asked Jehovah to help me be balanced, not fearful, but prepared. The next morning, during personal study, I reread Noah's account, not just the ark, but how people mocked him for building it. They were eating and drinking until the flood came and swept them all away. Matthew 24:38, 39. I knew Jehovah wasn't warning me to build a boat, but I also knew something was urging me to act. That week, I made my first move. I went to the hardware store and bought sandbags, lots of them. I cleared out the garage and turned it into a storage space for emergency supplies, bottled water, canned food, solar lanterns, blankets. I moved important documents into waterproof cases and started mapping higher routes out of town. My coworkers noticed. Prepping for the end of the world, Nate, one guy laughed as I loaded 50-pound bags into my truck. I smiled. Just trying to be wise. Or paranoid, he muttered. You witnesses take everything too literally. At home, things weren't much better. My wife Leah isn't one of Jehovah's Witnesses. She respects my beliefs, or at least she used to. But when she saw me draining our savings to buy supplies, her patience ran thin. Seriously, Nathan, sandbags. In Missouri, I explained what I'd read, the scriptures, the assembly talk. She sighed. You're letting religion control you again. Nobody else is doing this, not even the other witnesses. She wasn't wrong. No one in our congregation was moving like I was. I felt alone, even awkward. At the next meeting, a brother pulled me aside and gently asked if I was okay. Just don't let fear make you unbalanced, he said. I went home that night and sat in the car for almost an hour. I stared at our quiet street, the porch lights glowing, the river gently flowing in the distance. Everything looked normal, peaceful, but I couldn't shake that feeling. It wasn't fear, it was conviction. A quiet, stubborn pull inside me that whispered, keep going. You don't have to be understood to be obedient. So I kept going. I started encouraging others too. Not directly. I didn't want to cause panic, but I began casually mentioning how being prepared is a form of faith. I texted scriptures to friends, dropped hints during conversation. A few listened politely. Most changed the subject. My brother-in-law, Jeremy, was the loudest critic. One night at a family dinner, he said loud enough for everyone to hear, man, if this guy builds one more flood bunker, I'm gonna nominate him for the next Noah movie. Everyone laughed, except me. I just smiled and passed the mashed potatoes, but inside, it hurt. I wasn't trying to be dramatic. I wasn't trying to scare people. I just wanted to obey Jehovah's nudges, to be shrewd, to protect my family. Then one night, I sat down with Leah again. I said, listen, I know you think I'm overreacting, but I want you to trust me, not because I'm smart, but because I believe Jehovah is guiding me. Please, if I ever tell you it's time to leave, Just promise me you'll come. She looked at me for a long time. I love you, Nathan, she said. I think you're going overboard. But, if you ask me to go, I will. That promise was all I needed. I didn't know when, or if, disaster would strike, but I knew I had done what I could. I had obeyed, even when no one else understood. And in my heart, I felt peace. But I had no idea how soon that peace would be tested. Because just days later, the first drops began to fall. The rain started on a Tuesday. It was slow at first, just a drizzle that tapped the windows as I drove to work. No thunder, no lightning, just gray skies and soft rainfall. Missouri had seen worse, but what was different was how long it kept falling. By Thursday, the river behind our house had risen higher than I'd ever seen it. Local news mentioned flood risks in passing, but nobody acted alarmed, just the usual weather talk. Still, I checked the water levels twice a day and kept an eye on the alerts from the National Weather Service. I wasn't panicking, I was watching. At our Friday congregation meeting, I brought it up gently during the comments. I mentioned Noah again, how his obedience made no sense to others until the very end. A few nodded politely, but no one seemed worried. I understood. I had been there too, until Jehovah opened my eyes. But the pressure, it was building. At home, Leah had had enough. You're not sleeping. You're checking the river every hour. You've bought more canned food than we can eat in a year. She snapped as I restacked the emergency water jugs. Nathan, I know your faith means a lot to you, but this is too much. You're letting this take over everything. I paused, looked at her, and gently replied, I'd rather be over-prepared and wrong than unprepared and watch people I love suffer. She didn't respond. She just walked away. That night, I stayed up again, my Bible in one hand, the storm tracker open on my phone in the other. I read Psalm 46, 1-2. God is our refuge and strength, a help that is readily found in times of distress. That is why we will not fear, though the earth undergoes change. I repeated it out loud, like a shield against the doubt trying to creep in. But even among my spiritual family, doubt was spreading. Brother Miller, one of the elders, called me the next morning. Hey Nathan, I just wanted to check in. A few brothers mentioned you've been really focused on the weather and flood prep. Yes, I have, I admitted. I'm not predicting anything, but I do believe Jehovah is urging me to prepare. If I'm wrong, I'll accept that, but I won't ignore the feeling. There was a pause. Then he said, We appreciate your zeal, brother. Just remember to stay balanced. We don't want fear to replace faith. I thanked him for the call. He meant well, I knew that, but it still stung. I didn't want to be that brother. The one everyone gently avoids in conversations because he's too intense. The one people whisper about when his name comes up. But I also couldn't shake the conviction in my gut. On Sunday, I didn't go to the meeting, not because I didn't want to, but because I needed to double-check the evacuation plan. I drove the back roads I had mapped, tested the walkie-talkies, refilled the gas tanks, even gave my Bible student one final phone call, urging him to prepare just in case. He thanked me, but said I was probably overthinking things. The final straw came Monday night. Leah's brother, Jeremy, showed up uninvited. All right, Nate, he said with a smirk. I've come to see the fortress. What's next? You gonna build an ark in your driveway? He wasn't alone. Two of his friends came with him, snapping pictures and laughing as they posed next to my sandbag wall. I didn't say a word, not because I didn't have something to say, but because sometimes silence says more. I just stood there, Bible in hand, and let them laugh. My heart broke, not because of pride, but because I knew these were people I loved, and they were blind to the warning. Later that night, I sat at the foot of our bed, while Leah scrolled on her phone. I'm sorry they came like that, she said, without looking at me. It's okay, I whispered. I've been laughed at before. She looked up. Do you really think something's coming? I nodded. I don't know the day. I don't know the hour. But I do believe Jehovah is preparing us, and I want to be ready, physically and spiritually. She was quiet for a while. Then she said, I still think you're going too far, but if you tell me it's time to leave, I'll come. I nodded, tears burning behind my eyes, not because she agreed, but because she still loved me enough to trust me. And then, it began. That night, the rain picked up, the wind howled, and the river, silent and slow just days before, turned into a living, roaring force. By dawn, the roads were already starting to vanish underwater. I woke up to the sound of sirens. It was just after 5 a.m. The sky outside was still dark, but the street lights lit up a scene I'll never forget. Water everywhere. It was already halfway up the tires of the cars parked along the road, and it was still rising. I jumped out of bed and pulled the curtains wide. "Leah," I said, my voice urgent but calm, "it's time." She sat up instantly. No arguing this time. No eye rolls, just fear. "Is this really happening?" she asked. "It's happening." Within minutes, I had the go bags loaded in the truck. Our two closest witness friends, Josh and his wife Naomi, had agreed weeks earlier that if things ever got bad, we'd meet at my property. It was on higher ground, and I had everything prepped: food, water, first aid, flashlights, you name it. As we drove through the neighborhood, the water splashed higher with every block. I could see people standing on porches, barefoot in pajamas, pointing, filming with their phones, but still, not moving. Nobody expected this. Nobody, except those who had listened. Leah gripped the door handle. "I should have believed you sooner," she whispered. I didn't say anything. There wasn't time for that. We reached the house and found Josh and Naomi already there. I opened the gate and helped them unload their bags. The power was already flickering, so I cranked up the generator I had installed in the backyard just days before. Everything was working just as I had planned. And then came the banging. At first, it was soft, barely noticeable over the sound of the rain. But then it grew louder, more urgent. I opened the front door and saw something I'll never forget. Jeremy, Leah's brother, drenched from head to toe, mud on his jeans, panic in his eyes. Behind him were 4 other people: his girlfriend, 2 neighbors, and an elderly man from down the street. "Nate," he said, panting, "please, the water in our house is gone. The roads are blocked." We didn't know where else to go. For a second, we just stood there. This was the same man who had laughed, taken pictures, and called me paranoid in front of his friends. And now he was shivering on my doorstep, looking like a child who had seen too much too fast. I stepped aside. "Come in." They all rushed inside, dripping and scared. Leah helped them with towels, while I handed out blankets and food. The elderly man, Mr. Henderson, was shaking. I didn't think it would really happen," he mumbled. "It's okay," I told him. "You're safe now." As the storm raged outside, we sat together in silence, listening to the distant sound of trees breaking, sirens wailing, and water pushing its way through every low point in the town. But inside, there was calm. Naomi read aloud from Psalm 91:1. "Anyone dwelling in the secret place of the Most High will lodge under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say to Jehovah, you are my refuge and my stronghold, my God in whom I trust." Even Jeremy, who had once said Jehovah was just a name people made up, nodded slowly, holding his girlfriend's hand. That night, we prayed together, all of us, 12 people in one living room, former mockers, former skeptics, all now grateful to be alive and willing to bow their heads and listen to a prayer that started with "Jehovah, thank you for warning us," even when we didn't want to hear it. The next morning, the damage reports started coming in. Entire neighborhoods underwater, bridges collapsed, roads torn apart, power lines down, businesses destroyed. Even the local emergency broadcast system had failed midway through the night. One reporter on the radio called it a once-in-a-generation flood. But for me, it wasn't just a disaster. It was a confirmation. A confirmation that when Jehovah nudges your spirit, when his word stirs something deep inside you, you act, even if no one understands, even if they laugh, because obedience is never wasted. Later that week, as we helped clean up nearby streets, Jeremy walked beside me with a shovel in his hand. He was quiet at first. Then he said, "You know, Nate, I used to think you were insane, but now, I think you're the only one who saw it coming." I smiled and said, "I didn't see it coming. Jehovah did. I just listened." He nodded, then looked at me again. "Do you think you could teach me how to study the Bible, like for real?" And in that moment, everything, the mockery, the isolation, the tension, made sense. Jehovah wasn't just protecting our bodies, he was preparing hearts. 2 weeks after the flood, the town still didn't feel the same. The water had finally receded, but the damage was everywhere, not just in buildings or roads, but in people's hearts. You could see it in their faces. Eyes that once mocked now looked humbled. Neighbors who used to pass with a nod were now stopping to talk. Some wanted to thank me, others just wanted to ask, "How did you know?" I always gave the same answer: I didn't know, but Jehovah did. We kept sheltering people for several more days. At one point, we had nearly 18 people sleeping in shifts throughout the house. But what surprised me most wasn't how many came, it was how many stayed, not physically, but spiritually. Jeremy didn't miss a single Bible study after that night. He'd show up with his same sarcastic grin, but now it came with real questions. Why does Jehovah let things like this happen? What does the Bible say about listening to his voice today? Is there anything in the scriptures about being warned and ignoring it? I'd open up Matthew 24, Luke 21, Genesis 6, and slowly he started to change. So did Leah. One afternoon, I found her on the porch reading a Watchtower magazine I'd left on the table. She didn't say anything at first, just flipped through the pages with a thoughtful look on her face. Then she looked up and said, "I used to think you were obsessed, but now I think you were just ahead of me. Can I come to the meeting with you this week?" I didn't even answer. I just hugged her. When we arrived at the Kingdom Hall the following Thursday, several brothers and sisters rushed to welcome her. One elderly sister even whispered in her ear, "We've been praying for this day." Leah smiled, and for the first time in a long time, she smiled with peace. That night's talk was about Noah. Fitting, right? The speaker said something I wrote down word for word. Faith isn't proven by what we believe in peaceful times. It's proven by what we do when everyone else tells us we're wrong. I looked at Leah. She nodded, eyes glistening. After the meeting, Jeremy pulled me aside. "Hey," he said, "what do I have to do to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses?" I laughed. "Well, it starts with a Bible study." He grinned. "Then let's not waste time." Months later, the town began to rebuild, but our lives had already transformed. Leah started attending meetings regularly, and even signed up for her first ministry campaign. Jeremy progressed quickly, faster than anyone expected. The same guy who used to mock Bible truth was now telling others to listen. One day during field service, he turned to me and said, "You know, Nate, I used to think Jehovah was just a name, but now, he's everything." I choked back tears. "Me too, Jeremy. Me too." Narrator's final words. YouTube closing message to anyone watching this. Maybe you're the one being laughed at right now. Maybe your family thinks your beliefs are foolish. Maybe your co-workers say you're taking it too far. Maybe you even doubt yourself sometimes. But please, don't stop obeying Jehovah, even if you're the only one preparing, even if it makes you the odd one out, even if the world rolls its eyes at you. Because when Jehovah speaks, whether through a talk, a scripture, or a quiet pull in your heart, it is never in vain. I didn't know the flood was coming. I just knew Jehovah was telling me to get ready. And in the end, that obedience didn't just save our lives, it saved our hearts.